But when I think of my childhood, it was very carefree. We had a 2-story house, a mom and a dad, me and my brother, a dog and a rabbit, your white picket fence, and probably 6 or 7 boats. My mom is over there. And so we were out on the ocean all the time. And I had lots of time to daydream and to think and to be alone as a kid and play on islands that didn't have people on them. And that was really, really wonderful because I find that's hard for me to get for my kids to have these days. But I talked to God a lot, and I didn't know, I didn't have any teaching, so I just talked to him as an untaught kid would, and felt close to him in a kid kind of way. And when I came here 19 years ago, that's when I learned, like Sean was saying, about Jesus being Lord of your life. That's when I realized that what I had done in the Smoky Mountains of receiving Christ at a youth camp in North Carolina, that I just knew that I loved him, but my life didn't look any different from all the people that didn't say they loved him. And I just knew a tiny, tiny bit of believing that he was creator of everything, that he had made me. So when I came here 19 years ago, I found out that he is to be Lord of my life, and I was eager to give him everything that I knew how. And today this thought came to my mind. It was probably 2 or 3 months after I had been here. We had a guest minister come, Dr. Mark Barclay, and he had called me out and spoken over me. And he said, you're going to see the hand of the Almighty do a supernatural work that you will be forced to testify. In other words, you won't be able to hold it back. And I thought, that is exactly what I am doing right now before you guys here today. Something, the word of God that was spoken to me 19 years ago is coming to pass right now. Because I would never be doing this of my own free will. This is completely him, because I can't hold back what he has done in my life. And I'm telling strangers everywhere, and I'm not acting like myself, and I have not been myself for, I would say, the past 5 years. So for 19 years, I call it my shoebox of faith. And I was like a ping pong ball in there, and that was as much as I knew of God. So I was always hungry, but I kept kind of bouncing around in that box and not knowing I was in a box. So 5 years ago, there was a day in my life when truth came, and truth always sets you free if you let it. I think some people forget about that part. You have to receive that truth that you hear. And so when truth came to me, truth in this world situation, not Bible truth, but when that truth hit me, I knew to accept it, and that it would change everything. That I would either stay and keep my life the way it was, family life, your day in, your day out, or I would be stepping away from everything and just running to Jesus. And that was all I knew to do, because I realized, there was something that I didn't know that was big in my life. And so I ran and ran and ran to him. And that was a huge turning point for me, because first I realized I was stuck in a box, and it terrified me. I had seen the plan that the enemy had for my life, even though I had come and was a Christian and loved him and was reading my word and was at church all the time. It was like I saw scenes play before my eyes of the plan the enemy had to very shrewdly get me off track without me realizing, so that I would still think I was a Christian. I would still think I was submitted to him, but I wouldn't realize that tendril of deception that was coming to pull someone away like me that really wanted him all the time. And so when I saw that, I ran and ran and ran to him, and I let go of everything in my life. Things could look the same, but inwardly, I was screaming out for him, and I was crying for him. And it was from sun up till sundown. If I went to the bathroom in the middle of the night, I was right there in that place. And it was about 2 or 3 weeks of racing to him, like, I have to have you. So it was a completely different way that came out of this, of reading my Bible before. I was reading it to learn right from wrong. What do you do? I want him to be pleased with me. I want to obey his commandments. This time, I was in my word like I had never read it, because I had to know him. I had to get close to him. I had to get away from the stuff that terrified me, that I realized had been planned for my life. And so it was the worst time in my life, but it became the absolute best time in my life, because it brought me to where I am now. And it brought me to this living day in and day out and hearing his voice and knowing what to do and having this intimacy with him that I never knew before. I didn't know normal Christians could have that. I thought it was just for ministers, but there's this intimacy and closeness that you can have with Jesus through all day long, to where your life and your routine is like the hum of the air conditioner. That's not in the forefront. In the forefront is your desperation for him, your love for him, your excitement at being with him, your wonder at hearing him share things with you in the Word that you know you've read and you didn't see before. And so from this place is where I was when in 2020, January of 2020, I was in the doctor's office. I had had a spot on my leg for 5 years, and I had decided to have it cut off. And I had always heard, my mom had always said, when you get older, stuff shows up on your body and it doesn't look nice. I thought that's what it was. I didn't think anything about it. So I got the spot cut off. They called me back in. I still don't think anything of it. And they sit me down, and I'm in there about 3 hours, different doctors coming in and out and telling me that it's melanoma, that if you catch it early, it's great success rate. We cut it out, it's good, but you're not supposed to leave it like this. So already they're letting me know, you're in a bad situation. This isn't good. You need to have surgery. And I knew on the inside of me, because I already had that established relationship with him, they told me the news, and I never felt fear. I knew right away when they were saying what to do exactly what they're telling you. Use the doctor they're telling you, have the surgery like they say, and use the hospital that they say. Well, I on my own would not have done any of those things. I would have wanted a second opinion. I've always been told to go out of town to the hospital. So I knew to do exactly that. So I went through with the surgery, and they also took out a lymph node. And I knew if the lymph node comes back positive, you're supposed to do this holistic approach. So each time I was prepared to know what I was going to do next. And so when I went in, the lymph node did come back positive. And they said, now it's gained access to the rest of your body, so you're going to need all of these surgeries. And I already knew on the inside what I was going to do. And I knew I couldn't just tell this doctor, I'm really fine, doctor. And so he was sending me away out of town because I needed a specialist. And I went home. I was completely fine, and I started the holistic protocol. And my husband and I had agreed that after, I think it was 3 to 4 months of being on this, that I would go and have a PET CAT scan and see how the scan turned out. So I did that, and the scan came back, and it said that there was no evidence of disease. And the doctor was extra late in getting it back to me, so when he called and he told me that news, he said, but you're not out of the woods. There could be microscopic cells. This is a very aggressive cancer. It hides. You still need to do chemotherapy. And so I repeated back to him, I said, but you said there was no evidence of disease on the scan today, right? And he said, yes. So I hung up the phone, and I squealed and ran out of the upstairs bedroom and called down to my older kids, and they came running, and I said, I'm cancer-free. And I never really believed that I had the cancer attached to me. I just knew I had that report because I knew that Jesus was my healer the whole way through. So I never lost a moment's sleep. I did not think about it during the day, honestly, guys. My husband has told me many times, you are not normal. Usually you have to process this. My daughter was concerned about me because I was so uncaring about this cancer report that I had as my leg was healing and I was propped up on the sofa enjoying being with Jesus, noticing the way the leaves moved in the breeze and all kinds of things that I didn't sit down to notice for that many hours a day. So fast forward to November of that year, so November 2020, I have a lump come up on my swimsuit line, which is where they had removed the lymph node. And being me, I didn't think anything of it, so I waited about 3 weeks and realized, oh, this lump is still here. And then I told my husband, and he said, we need to go to the doctor. And so I felt peace about that. So I said, okay, so we went to the doctor, and as they start realizing, and he looks through my report and realizes, you never went out of town to the specialist, you never had additional surgeries, you never did chemo. And I said, no. And I was sitting on that little table just kind of swinging my legs because I'm good. And he put his head in his hands and just let out this long sigh. And so I just sat quietly, and he said, in over 20 years of practice, I have never had a patient have a positive lymph node and not have further surgeries. And I have never seen that in our practice. He goes, nobody does that. And I was quiet instead of saying, well, I did. And so then my husband was with me at that appointment, and we were in a different place. So he was alarmed by the news that the doctor was saying, and he was not liking that, and he's protective as my husband. So him and the doctor start to get into it, and I just hang out while they're having this back and forth, and he's wanting to know, what do I need to do? Where do I need to take her? What are her chances? He kept asking him that. Because at the time I did not like this. Since I have thanked him because I said I needed it as part of my story. But I said, don't ever ask a doctor what my percentage of survival is. But it was good because the doctor said, she doesn't have any chance of surviving. He said, her only chance is a miracle. And that's when I said, I already have my miracle. And it just kind of fell flat because he doesn't know me at all. And he doesn't know that I really know Jesus and that he's my healer. And so we left out of there, and it was a long goodbye with the doctor. He had tears in his eyes. He thought he was never going to see me alive again. I actually felt, I had such compassion towards him because he was really nice, and I knew he didn't get it, but he thought that I was in denial and that I didn't get it, and he tried to sit knee to knee with me and talk to me and look me in my eyes, and I just couldn't get on board with him because I knew he was fretting about nothing. I knew that I was healed and that this cancer could not hurt me. And so he walked me all the way out into the hallway, my husband and I, just had his arm on the small of my back. And then when we left, I had a skip in my step as I'm leaving. And we get into the truck, and I ended up being on a supercharged high. I usually run very excited about Jesus because it is pretty amazing to live with him every day. So I live high anyway. But I was supercharged for 3 weeks. I just felt so excited, like in my spirit, man. And when I went home from that, I remember my husband had wanted to pray with me when we pulled up, and he said, but I need to process, and I can't. I said, no, that's okay. And I bounded out of the car, and I went in, and I didn't think about it for, I want to say, probably 2 days. It just kind of sat out here, and I didn't do anything with that yet. And I had been trained and disciplined myself already to go by in here when you hear an alarm, or when you feel a nudge to do something, or when you hear words. And so it just sat out here. And about 48 hours later, I remember standing by this desk where I would study. And I just began to look at the doctor's report, what had been said to me. I looked at how the cancer came the first time, and when you're told you have cancer, people around you and people you don't really know, they hear that. So that news kind of travels, because it doesn't sound good when someone you know in your church has cancer, and among your community, and my family in Florida. And I thought, the cancer came, and that was from the devil, and it left. People knew about it when it came, but when it left, it was very quiet. Like, it was just gone. And I'm not a talk to strangers, be very outgoing kind of person. And so I just knew I was healed at the beginning, and I knew I was still healed at the end. But I was just processing that the cancer came loud, and that was the devil's doing, and it left, and that was God's doing, that I was never harmed by it. And now the devil is sending me cancer a second time, and he knows that I know what he's about. He knows that I know how he operates and what he did the first time. Like in the doctor's office, the first time when I got the news, I had about the 3 hours of different doctors coming in and out. I remember just wanting them to just leave me alone for 5 minutes so I could talk to God out loud. I think that's important, to speak out loud things. So I have my internal conversation going on. But I remember the first moment it was quiet, where the door shut, and I was actually left alone in there. And I first spoke to the devil. And I said, what in the world were you thinking to throw cancer on me? I already know that you bring cancer. I'm not going to receive this. And you're the one that's going to be made to look bad. I said, God is my healer. And I had brought a dear friend. She was at death's door with cancer. And so I learned a lot by fighting spiritually for her through that. That's when I knew a month later, when sickness came to me, that's when I got the whole revelation that, no, you don't just have to get sick. And so I really had gotten a hold of my healing. So when cancer came, I just thought, no way. And so I talked to him, and then I remember just thanking God. I didn't ask him for healing because I already knew that I possessed his healing. I knew that he was my Savior, and I had that, and I had already received it. I wasn't getting even runny noses or sore throats, nothing for years. And so the second time when it came and I was standing there by my study desk, and I talked to the devil first again, once I decided to look at it. And I thought, you know what? You went away quietly the first time, but you're not going to go away quietly the second time. And I just thought, how dare you mess with me like this again? And so then I prayed to God, and I said, God, I want you to do everything you can to expose the devil and to glorify you. Because I know the devil is putting this on me, not really because he doesn't like me, it's just because I represent you. And he's putting it on me to make you look bad, so that it looks like, yep, some Christians do just, cancer takes them, and God's not really who he says he is, and his word isn't really, he's not faithful to it all the time. Well, none of that is true. God is faithful all the time. He says, my people perish for lack of knowledge. We got to keep learning and knowing how to take all these things he's freely given to us, and we're designed to grow and do that. But his word says we die because we don't know stuff, not because he's unfaithful. And healing isn't a reward that he gives us for obedience. That's something we get at salvation. That's free. That's part of salvation when he washes our sins away. He says he heals us from all of our iniquities. We're equipped for him. So I thought the devil is really coming to mar God's name on my face. And I thought, I'm not willing as a servant of the Most High God. I'm not willing to have that on me. I'm not willing to go to the grave with sickness, because my God heals, and my God has transformed my life, and I'm not in the kingdom of darkness. I've been translated through, and I've seen what the kingdom of darkness is about, and I live in the kingdom of light, and I will never go back, and I will fight him, because God already won the battle, but I get to rage and go at him with the word of God, because I know he's under my feet. And I was really mad he did it a second time. The first time I didn't really know, I guess. I got a little more seasoned the second time around. And so that was my prayer to him. And then I didn't think about it again after that. And fast forward to November of the next year. Now it's a year. This is how much I just love to be with Jesus. So I was with him on all these different, wherever he was leading me, on studying and being with him every day. But I never looked at the cancer report again. I never thought about that. I never asked him anything about it. So a year later, I remember on my journal seeing November, and that's when my mind went, hey, it's been a year, and I still have this physical lump that I can feel. I know it has to add up with the doctor's office. You know, they have to show that I have a clean report. It needs to match the report of the Lord. So I thought, I can't just have this lump forever. And so that's when I went to God, and I asked him. I said, I need understanding. And I love it because he never led me to deal with anything with that, and so I didn't. There are a lot of profound things I've learned that were really easy on my part, because it's just hooking up and following him, and he guides you through all of these minds and all of these things that could totally throw you off path. But as long as you follow him and you know how to keep it out of the mental realm and stay in the spirit realm while you live, it is super addictive and fun. So I asked God about that a year later, and I said, I need to have understanding. I want to know, why do I still have this? And he said, what did you ask me for? And I said, to do everything you could to expose the devil and to glorify you. And he said, you asked me, God, creator of everything. And there was a brief pause to where I just thought, I did this. I asked God, creator of everything, to do all he could. That's what he said, to do all that I could. And then he paused again. And I paused with the weight of his words and thinking, I did ask you that, and I did mean that, and I still back that prayer. And I said, yes, I did ask you to. And he said, well, I'm working. And he said, would you believe you were more healed if that lump was gone? And I said, no, absolutely not. The lump doesn't tell me I'm healed. Your word tells me I'm healed. So I said, I know I'm healed no matter what my body looks like. And so that was the end of that conversation, and that was a lot for me to digest. And then I kept going back to him over time as I would kind of take that and internalize it and be in the Word and listen, and then more questions would arise. So now I realize this is far bigger than anything I knew when I was asking him. I just thought that's the right thing to do. When the devil comes at you and wants to make it look like he can take out one of God's kids, we should fight back. We're totally equipped. Jesus did all of that and took it on the cross for us. And I've seen that so much more now. Why would I want to take something horrible on me when he already took that horribleness? He never deserved it. I do deserve it. He took it just so that I never had to know that weight. I never had to know that care. But if we take it up here, it starts to sink into our heart and we start to believe those cares, but we don't have to. And it's so free to live without that. So I went the second time I found my voice, as I told you. So I decided to go back for my follow-up doctor's appointment that I kept putting off because you're supposed to go back every 6 months and let them do a full body check just to make sure that you're good. And before I kept wanting, I thought, well, I want it to be healed. I don't want to have to tell the doctor that I'm crazy and that I'm in love with Jesus and that I don't buy all of the stuff they want to tell me. But then after he started showing me this and told me in January of this year, he said, I want you to start sharing your testimony. And I thought I was supposed to have it completed. I don't know why, but I thought I needed to have the finished story. And he said, I want people to see what your faith looks like in the midst of a 0% survival rate. And so I immediately just started telling people and failing over and over in how I did it. Every time I would come home, I'd be like, well, I learned again what not to do, because I was not natural at knowing how to randomly spark up a conversation with a stranger, tell them about Jesus, and be in and out in like 3 minutes. I just did not know how to do that. And the first time was with my dad, who's an unbeliever, and he's in Florida, and I tried to write it down because I thought, I'll play it like I'm talking off the cuff, but I'll be reading it to make sure I hit the points of exposing the devil and glorifying God. And he didn't notice, so that was fine, but I knew this is not going to work with people. It's going to take all the personal heart of it out of it. And so I've come a long way with that, with telling my testimony. Where was I just going with that? About starting to share. Oh, so I went back to the doctor. I decided, okay, now I'm ready. I'm going to make my appointment. I told my son, I said, you pay money to go see a concert, right? To hear the band perform. I said, I'm going to pay money for an audience with my doctor to tell him about Jesus. And so I paid my $75 and I made my appointment in March and I went there and I was so pumped up and excited. I didn't think about someone could react bad. I hear all this afterwards, but it's just good to stay out of this part. I was just burning with excitement to tell them, Jesus is my healer. The cancer can't hurt me. That's why the lump is still here. That's why I feel amazing and I have no symptoms other than a physical lump that's there. And so the doctor came in. She started down at my feet, and I knew the first words are always the hardest when you start. And she said, so you've been sent off to the specialist. Tell me what's been going on and about your surgeries. And I said, oh, I'm not doing any of that. And I remember her just looking up at me, and I'm like, okay, just dive in, Amy, dive in, just go. And I said, well, cancer always comes with fear and death. And I said, but my story comes with Jesus and life. Or my cancer, that's what I said. My cancer comes with Jesus and life. And she stood up and went over to the chair and like collapsed in this chair, didn't have arms on it, and her arms went like this, and her face just went down. So I knew, don't say anything. And I just stood there, and I thought, I got her attention. And then she looked up, and her eyes were filled with tears, and she said, I don't want you to die. And I said, I'm not going to die. I said, Jesus is my healer. I said, I'm not just someone that shows up at church once in a while and says they know God. I said, I really live with them every single day. We talk to each other. I said, it is incredible. It's wonderful. I'm a real Christian, is what I told her. And so she ended up being so wonderful. We had this back and forth conversation where she was, I wouldn't say hungry, but she was curious to know, who is she, and why does this girl act like this, and why is the cancer not hurting her? So she was going between asking about my faith and how I live it to putting back her doctor hat on and saying, but you've lost weight. I said, no. She said, you're in pain. And I said, no, I don't have it. She comes over and starts pushing all over my leg. I have this 8-inch scar there, and she's, this hurts. And I'm like, no, I feel great. I said, in fact, I've never felt better. I feel amazing. And she just like looks perplexed, and she sits back down in the chair. And so we finished the back and forth Jesus stuff that I got to share with her, because she did say, well, as a Christian, you could believe God and do medicine. And I loved this that poured out of my mouth, because it's exactly, God had me all set up. The first time I said, well, I have. The first time I did everything verbatim the doctors told me to do. And I said, because that's what he told me to do. And I said, and the second time I knew, don't do anything the doctors are telling me to do. And I said, and so I haven't. So I said, I get all the people that believe, oh, the doctors have all the answers and you have to go to them. I complied with that. And then I get all the people that say stay away from the doctors, or you need natural methods because doctors kill you. I said, I complied with that too. I said, so my story is going to reach all the masses of people, and it doesn't matter if people are saved, because it builds up our faith, it stirs us up, and our answers are always in other people's testimony. Or if they're unsaved, because then they hear that Jesus is their healer, and wow, I can have a whole new life. I would like to throw the towel into my life. And I'm like, yes, you can. It's phenomenal. Don't go just like part way, go all the way in. And so I had a great time with her. At the end of the conversation, we had about a 45-minute appointment. She stayed in there with me. And then I said, at the end of it, I said, I do need your help. And she looked at me like, what in the world can I do for you after all that you just told me? And I said, well, I know the Jesus Bible faith side, but I said, I don't know anything about the medical side. I have not gone online because I don't want to look online at anything. So I said, I don't know how many cases like mine are out there. And she looked up and she goes, none, not any. Everyone is dead. No one has lived with melanoma in their lymph node coursing through their body like this and lived. And I went, yes, that's awesome. And she's like, ugh. And I was so excited because I thought, okay, I have a 0% survival rate. She asked me about what the other doctor said, and I told her, and she said, yeah, I just didn't know if he told you that. And I said, yeah, he did tell me 0%. And I thought, so anyone who says, no, I can't, my case is worse than yours. No, I have 0%. I'm so thankful for that 0, because no one can say that I can't talk to them about Jesus because he won't work for them. It's been a year and a half that I have it showing on the scans, the cancer in my body. I don't feel any symptom. I eat whatever I want. I asked him, should I change my diet? I know sugar feeds it. He goes like, you can if you want to, but I didn't tell you to. I thought, then I'm eating sugar. And I don't even really like it. I just like to eat it in spite of it because I can. So I purposely will just eat a little just because it's fun. So it's been a year and a half. I feel great. I know that this is supposed to go down in the medical journals. I told that doctor, that's when I said I needed her help. I said, I asked her about that, how many cases like mine were out there. And then I said, I need your help to make sure everything is documented on my records. Because I said, this is staying here because God is getting all the glory and the devil is getting exposed that he brings cancer. And I said, so instead of having what I went through with the doctors, which thankfully I could have cared less, but most people I know aren't like me, when they tell you there are no chances for you, they will always say, there was this one girl, and that will be me, that will be recorded. And so she ended up telling me to lay down. She measured my lump again, put it in there. But I want that to be on their records, that yes, someone did have this, and they lived, and you know what? The cancer left their body. Like, I think this is a super special time now because I do still have the physical lump that's there, and I know that's going to be gone. But I don't want someone praying it away for it to leave right now, because I'm like, God is doing something, and I trust him, and I want the full measure. Like when I prayed that from my heart, from my belly. I didn't know the magnitude of what I was saying. And he's telling me, I want you to take this to the world. I want you to take this story to the world. And so I thought, okay. So I'm starting in Sioux City, Iowa, right in my backyard, and he will show me all the steps. But we can't, I think when you just pray stuff, the answers are his. They're so much bigger. Like if I had known all that, I'm sure my mind would have really fought to get in there. And I'm so glad I didn't know any of that, because it is so freeing to live for him and not to have any care about anything. Like if you have a 0% survival rate, you could care less about anything. Money, like all these other things, because it parallels with your spiritual life. And I've already left the kingdom of darkness and I'm in the kingdom of light. So you think I'm afraid that you're saying there's an attack against my body? It can't hurt me. I'm in the kingdom of light. I live with Jesus. So money, whatever goes on in culture. No, I'm out to win souls. I'm out to share Jesus with people. So it's wonderful. And if you have any questions, you're welcome to ask me a question. Nothing is too personal, because I will just tell you. But, and if not, I'm so glad all of you came to hear. I got to share my story with you. Yes? I would say dive. Oh, the question was, what would you say if someone in the last couple weeks was diagnosed with cancer in stage 2 and that she's needing chemo? And she said she is a Christian. I think the biggest thing is diving into the Word. Because when you go after the Word just because you want Jesus, not because you're trying to fix yourself, going after Jesus fixes you. You don't have to, things fall away, things get corrected. It is so much easier than trying and 5 years later still being in the same spot, because our trying always fails. But going after the Word, and then since she's a Christian, it's so important to stay inside of your measure of faith. I know that my faith, it seems simple to me. I know it sounds extraordinary because I have a lot of people whose mouths like just drop open all the time when I talk. And that's a reminder that I'm not ordinary about my take on this. But wherever you are with your measure of faith, if you go too easy, like I'm just not going to trust God, the doctor said I can nix this if I do chemo and take the medicine he tells me, and you put no pull on your faith and no pull on trusting him, that's no faith at all, and there's failure there. And if you go out and say, well, I heard this one girl talk, and she just said, oh, forget it all, go out and just, have fun, and life is an amusement park, you're going to fail there too if you haven't been strengthened to get there. Like, I'm out on the edge of my faith, more so just talking to you guys here like this than it is to believe him for healing, because I had already come through a lot of strengthening in my faith for that. But to come here and not be prepared with any words of what I was going to say, I feel like my rubber band of faith is like about to just pew. But I'm here because it's thrilling and it's addictive to be his kid, because he has so many better ways. But yes, just diving into the Word and taking it and not feeling like you just have to read chapters and chapters, but you're reading because you want to know him. And when you read like that, you begin to learn his voice. And the more you hear his voice, the more you trust it, because you know that is him. That is not me. And it always comes up from here instead of from the mental realm, And when you know he's said something to you and he's highlighted like 3 words even or whatever, it doesn't have to, I think so many people think that it has to be grandiose and all this, study all these books. It's just the Bible and Jesus. And learning to discipline your mind to believe the Word and to shut off the mind and take thoughts captive and refuse to think on them. But believing and letting, because when you know he has spoken to you, I think that's so important. I knew that I was healed, so no matter what the doctor said, it never flinched me, never budged me. I mean, I forgot about it for a year. So that was because I knew he spoke, so no one could tell me otherwise. But if I wasn't sure that was his voice, I could see that I could be derailed because I wouldn't be firm in him. And he says to believe him completely and to speak. Speaking is so important. I speak to myself aloud all the time. I'm really loud if I'm alone in the car, but when I'm home with people, I'm just always, because you have to hear yourself saying it. Faith comes by hearing, and it builds you up. And you've got to be saying it, and it shuts your mind off too if you're constantly speaking what you know you're going to have. You believe it. There's so much everywhere. I don't know. I know Galatians 2:20 was huge to me 5 years ago, about I have been crucified with Christ, and it is no longer I who live, but Christ lives in me, because I felt like my name wasn't even mine anymore. And coming through that place of being his, to where he totally rebuilt me, none of how I am, how I act is familiar to me. So it's easier just to stay in that place because I burned everything instead of holding on to parts. And I think wherever you don't trust him, it sounds bad not to trust him, but it's also a help to us because then we know we're not trusting him. So this is an area I need to get word on. But as you go, sometimes you can just look at healing scriptures or whatever, but as you look, let him speak to you through that so you can grab onto that instead of feeling like I got to read 50 of them. The word is always amazing, but if you're not, you need to hear him. And the more you hear him, the more you trust him. So, yes. I think, did you hear that question? Kind of. She's had two family members, one who is a Christian and one who's not. And they've had cancer, but it's both. They have a clean report now, but she's saying, because it frequently does, they say it comes back. And of course, people believe that, and that also pulls it. But to the non-Christian, this sounds hard, but I think whatever gets them to their rock bottom, you gotta have Jesus, and you don't want to be protected and coddled here and then go to hell and you realize, oh, the other people were right. And that following the Spirit to know how to confront and where to push and where to keep your mouth shut is the best thing, because our minds can always say, well, God's always right. I used to do that. I used to always want to interject it because I felt like if I didn't, I wasn't standing up for him. But that was just from my head of believing him and feeling like that was just the right thing to do. But it's so much more fun to go from here. So for the one who doesn't believe, the cancer can be a great opportunity. My very worst time in my life brought me my very best time in my life because it made me run to him. But I didn't have that kind of fear before because I didn't know. And when you see the enemy more clearly, you realize, why is everyone whooping it up and thinking it's fun? It's really serious, but nobody would buy it if he just showed his true colors. And the one who does believe, though, you want them to press in more. But Jesus is our healer, and I realized I hadn't properly received his forgiveness of my sins. Some people need someone to whack them over the head all the time to get them straight. The slightest look when I was a kid would send me crumbling and to do right. So I think I got 1 or 2 spankings my whole life. So God told me, I'm way harder on myself because I don't put those things on you. You're doing that to yourself. And I had to start stepping out of that because I was so rigid with myself of how I thought I should be to conform to the word because I so wanted to please him. But that's not pleasing him. It's just following him. It's wanting him. Like someone that you love, a family member, whoever that you love, you don't want to just force them to love you. He just wants us to be with him and learn how to breathe with him and do everything in our day with him. And it's just so sweet and good, and you lose an appetite for everything else the more you get him. It's like I forget about, I used to cook a lot more, and now I'm just so caught up, and I know that I'm in a certain season, and my husband's very understanding, but I really could care less about food because I so want his word. I so just want to stay on fire with him because I'm so excited about his nearness. And I'm calm also, but I get very excited, and I have to let out whoops of joy and stuff, but the more you get an appetite for him, just other things don't satisfy you the way they used to. I don't want to go to sleep at night because I don't want to stop talking to him. Like last night was after midnight because I was just like, it's just so good and you don't want to, but then you go to sleep because you know you're supposed to sleep and it's good for you. But then I woke up at 5 and I knew I should go to sleep, but I'm like, I'm just so excited to be with you. I want to go sit and watch the sunrise with you. And so I did because I was excited because I was coming here tonight. So I thought, well, it's all right. But we just need more Jesus. And that it's okay to talk. I think that was another thing I learned of We want to keep our words right. But I realized when I had to share my testimony, when he said to start saying it, my prayer was to expose the devil and to glorify God. And so to expose him, you have to say the ugly stuff. I have to say what my doctor report was, what he says is going on. And I think a lot of times as Christians, we can try to be too careful with our words, but we need to connect. We got to help each other. We got to be strong to hold each other up and say, it's okay. Like, I can say what the doctor said. I have no hookup internally with those doctor's words, but I have to properly glorify God, I have to expose the enemy for who he is. Or people don't realize how great God is because they were like, well, isn't everything great? Like, but when you know the devil's really, really bad. And God did speak to me and said, if you had believed the doctor's report that second time when I was in there, he said, you would be dead. And I just sat there, and then he said, you would be with me in heaven. But if you had believed that report based on what we've walked through, you would not be on earth anymore. And then I thought, oh God, like now I'm seeing this call that he has, and I thought I can't imagine being with you in heaven and knowing I never completed what you made me to do. And that kind of rolled around in me a few days because I just thought, oh, there's lots of people in heaven that didn't get to complete. How do you know there's no going back to try one more time? How do you sit with that for all eternity? And he woke me in the night and told me the words, and I stuck it in my phone. When you chase after me, the call fulfills itself. That was at like 4 something one morning. And I thought, I'm so glad I wrote it down because in the morning I'm like, where's that? And I saw it and I'm like, yeah, and that's that natural, instead of working on yourself to be Christ-like, you just chase after him. Like a little kid loves to go wherever their dad or mom goes. They're not thinking about it, and they learn how to stay in line. They learn how to act at the grocery store. They learn how to do that if they're with them. We learn how to be Christ-like if we're with him all the time. And those things are falling away instead of, I slept past my alarm and didn't have my devotional. Instead, it's all day long. All I want is to be with him. I don't care if I'm doing dishes. I don't care if I'm in a big conversation. Inwardly, we're together. I'm learning how to be quiet with you and stuff. I'm learning how to have great parties with. It's just amazing. I had no idea this life was possible. But it's supposed to be co-laborers with Christ. It's not him doing everything and we're just, it's together. He pointed out to me, I kept glorifying him for this call and I'm like, you're just so amazing. And he said, but you asked me for this. But I was like, I didn't know what you were giving me. And he said, but your desire was to take the cancer and to glorify me. And he said, you learned that from me because I take bad things and make them good. And he had to tell me that a few times because it was hard for me to say, okay, that was my part. But we have all of these his parts and our parts. I write that in my journal all the time. Like me, him, and my part and his part, because it's important that we not step into his part because then he can't do it. If we think we've got the answer to something, we've just turned it off on him. And he has it, but we've shut off the door of him responding to us and giving us that answer. And we have to go as long as we go. And sometimes we never come to him on stuff. So we're always learning. But don't berate yourself, just keep going. He told me that because I wanted to be careful to do this right when I started sharing my testimony. And he said, I don't want you being careful. He said, when a little kid learns how to walk, they fall on the floor and they get back up. And the parents and the family sit around and they laugh and they smile and they like watching that little toddler learn how to walk. He said, you're not going to mess anything up. Go out there and start talking. But if you are careful because you want to try to get all your words right, you will mess it up. And so I just went, and I keep that with me, like coming today. Why would I prepare anything? He said, all of our preparing has been the last 5 years. He goes, do you think you're not prepared? But I come in here not knowing how I'm going to start other than my name and to trust him because he said, I want to pick the parts of your story. The very first time I went to share, I wanted to have just a loose outline. I thought that was something I needed because there's so many parts, as you can tell. And he wasn't giving me anything. And normally I write pages and pages every day of our conversations and just how he's teaching me and learning in the Word. And he wasn't giving me anything. And at 10:30, the night before I was supposed to say something at 8 a.m., then I sat directly up in bed because suddenly he spoke to me about it. And he said, I don't want you picking what to say. I want to pick it. I want to pick the parts of your story. I know the people that are coming. And so it is really fun, but that's my faith stretched really far to come in here and look already. But as he said, I know him. And he kept telling me, as we do in private, you'll do before the masses. So just be with me. But I'm being bare in front of you guys like I would be with him, one-on-one. But he said, I want people to see intimacy with me because he's hungry to be close and have more of us and not have us try to hold up all these parts to have a successful life as a Christian. He wants us to let go of it and seek him and let him build and create something extraordinary. That we would say, who, me? So, anything else? My answers might be too long. Well, thank you everyone for coming and thank you for having me.
So there's this thing I have about talking about intimacy with Christ. It's like making love in public. Because you're bare. You know what I mean? You're just... Do you really? We must be talking to the same guy. Anyway, whatever. Thanks for coming. Thanks for coming. And I just pray that everyone, whatever you heard tonight, that some part of it you take home with you. And that it transforms that part of you that has been reluctant to jump into intimacy with Christ. That you open that door and take a chance on the one who loves you so much that he died for you. So, anyway, well, now we